Harry merely a puppet doing Meghan Markle's bidding? And hello everyone, welcome to World News Network. My name is Brittany, and today we are talking about the latest from Prince Harry's court case against the Mirror Group newspapers, and specifically a comment he made on the stand on June 7th, talking about how this whole case, everything has come about, all the series of court cases. He has about 7 or so lawsuits going on right now. And the reason behind most of these lawsuits is to address what Harry considers the abusive and intrusive nature of the press against his wife, Meghan Markle. Yes, despite him telling us he's doing this all to help the industry, to help the world be a better place. Really, at the end of the day, this is all about Meghan. This is all about Meghan, her narcissism, her inability to accept that she is not considered a popular person within the broader public. However, I think this strategy that Meghan Markle has instituted, which I'll go into, and how she's really pulled his strings and dredged up all these things that have led to all these court cases, is not only leading to his demise in the way in terms of the realm of public perception, but hers as well. And you've got to ask the question, did Meghan Markle lose control of her puppet? But if you guys haven't been here to Royal News Network before, like I said, my name is Brittany, and on this channel I provide compelling royal commentary about the latest news and sometimes a little bit of gossip as well. In addition, I will be reviewing television shows and movies and sharing a bit about history. So if you guys want to subscribe, that would be fantastic. It has been such a crazy time within the royal sphere, and I would love to have you come on by. In addition, I have a weekly newsletter, Royal Wire, and I just released my latest Royal Wire yesterday. It's been a little bit, but I was so excited. I was talking about this court case, delving into a little bit what I'm going to talk about here, but also pulling it into a totally different conclusion. It offers a lot of news and updates about what's going on in the rest of the royal fold, some of the videos you might have missed, and I'm going to be starting to add features like historical news. We had this really interesting bit of historical news that Thomas Cromwell, so this is not the guy who executed Charles II, although they are related. Thomas Cromwell, there is a portrait of him, and he has a book in front of him, and they have actually found that original book. So the original book that was in the portrait, they do actually have. This is super exciting because we don't actually have a lot of artifacts that we saw in Tudor paintings. So this is a huge bit of news. Then I also have a fashion channel. I just went over the tiaras worn in the Jordanian royal wedding, and I have a whole video on the Jordanian royal wedding and all the fashion. So if you guys are interested in that, head on over there. In addition, I also have an upcoming trip to Germany and Austria, and I still have spots. And guys, honestly, this is going to be really exciting. I'm so excited. I haven't been to some of these places before, so I'm super stoked. So if you love the sound of music, we'll be touring Salzburg in Austria, where they filmed some of it. So if you guys are interested in that, feel free to follow the link down below as well. And before we get into this whole crazy mess, one thing I want to highlight is that Princess Madeline and her husband Christopher O'Neill, she is the Princess of Sweden, so they just celebrated their 10th anniversary, and she posted some new pictures we haven't seen before. So that was kind of exciting. I didn't realize their wedding anniversary was on June 8th, which is actually only a couple days after Sweden's National Day. So I didn't realize those two events were actually so close together. And we also had the King and Queen of the Belgians. So this is King Philippe and his wife Matilda. They are currently in the UK, and they just met with King Charles and Queen Camilla at Windsor Castle. So that's kind of a fun bit of news there. So back to Prince Harry and this court case. Apparently he struggled a little bit more on the second day, to the point of almost getting emotional. He's emotional over the trial that he has to testify about, and that he doesn't know the answers to, because about 18 times in his testimony he had to say, well, I don't know. And this was just on the second day, which was only halfway through the testimony. He doesn't know. He has essentially no evidence except for suspicions that somebody went through and perhaps hacked his phone. Now, this phone hacking scandal did, of course, actually occur, but there is almost zero evidence that this really happened to Harry as much as it did to William and Catherine. There are some instances where it involved Chelsea, did involve Harry a bit. Apparently his phone was only hacked once, because part of this is an ego trip, because at the end of the day, Harry is a spare, and while there is interest in him, there was never as much interest in him as there was in William. That's just full stop. That's just how it is. If you are the heir, you were just a bit more popular. You're just a bit more at the forefront. And especially because William had a very serious girlfriend for basically his entire adult life, and that was Catherine before she became his wife. Everybody wanted to know what they were doing when they would get married. I believe it was actually the phone hacking scandal that was the first instance where we knew that William's nickname for Kate was Babykins. I believe that came up because they hacked her phone and were able to get some of his voicemails. And so this is a very serious situation where people's privacy was deeply invaded. Totally 100% that happened. But did that happen to Meghan? No. It didn't. Meghan Markle came onto the royal scene about 10 years or so after this was an issue. So phone hacking was in the early 2000s. Meghan was a struggling no-name actress who could not get a role to save her life. And so she was not a part of this phone hacking thing. So you're wondering, well, why in the world is it, if there's this whole phone hacking thing and Harry's going on and on about this, if this didn't impact Meghan, why is Meghan essentially the catalyst for it? Because here is the key quote. And so this came about when they started asking questions to Harry of why did you bring this court case? Because William settled out of court and he was an actual victim of the situation. Harry, it's questionable. They may have one instance and they acknowledge this. The mirror acknowledges and apologizes. But what Harry does throughout the whole trial is take this one instance and smear everything else as if it was a phone hacking incident, where information, sadly, if you are royal, if you are a public figure, can get out in a variety of different ways. It doesn't necessarily mean that your phone was hacked if somebody happens to find out your flight plan. That is not a smoking gun. That is somebody who probably bribed somebody at the airport, somebody knew the manifest, somebody saw you at the airport. There are different ways for information to get out, a ton of ways. No security teams are not flawless in how they do things all the time. I mean, they're very good, but when it comes to certain things, it is challenging, especially when you're on public transportation. But here's the quote that Harry said, and it encompasses why this trial is so clearly not about helping Joe Public, which Harry says it is, not about addressing what Harry calls the rock bottom of the government and the media. This is all about satiating Meghan Markle for Harry. He is her puppet in this instance and she has wound him up. So here's what he says. I think it was a discussion about how to find a way to stop the abuse and intrusion that was coming against me and my wife without relying on the institution's lawyers. So Harry's bringing this court case to stop the abuse and intrusion into his and Meghan's life for something that's no longer happening and never impacted Meghan. Does that make any sense to you? No, it's ridiculous. It's illogical. All of this stuff, they're bringing up articles that happened 27 years ago, 23 years ago, 20, sometimes 15. But these are very, very old articles and address a very old situation. In fact, the person who's mentioned most out of anything is Chelsea Davy, who was Harry's girlfriend at the time and who did experience a lot of these things that Harry is complaining about. But she's not bringing the lawsuit. It's him. And he's bringing this lawsuit because of Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle, because of the abuse he believes that she has suffered, he is instituting and pursuing all these court cases, even though a lot of them don't have a strong legal basis. And he's found lawyers that are willing to indulge his whims and not tell him, hey, this might not go well for you. But also, this is addressing an issue that's not even a problem anymore. They're not phone hacking. Meghan has never been phone hacked. In addition to that, how is this going to stop anything? It's not. But I think this is all part of Meghan's apparatus that she's built around Harry, this narcissistic, delusional bubble that they live in. And really the big thing for this is the fact that Meghan has always presented herself to Harry as Diana 2.0. She is Diana. She allegedly wore Diana's perfume on their first date. She went to Africa with him. She very much made the coy. She tried to play very naive, especially you can tell in the engagement interview. She's like, oh, we don't have tabloids in the US. Now, granted, they're not the same as the British, but oh yeah, we have tabloids, honey. And you were trying to get on them for years, so don't tell me you don't know what tabloids are. Of course you do. She tried to play coy. She very much tried to play as Diana for Harry. And then when they went to Australia, especially because Sunshine Sachs was pumping both of them up, they were like, oh, well, she is the next Diana. And Harry's like, well, she is the next Diana. Even when they were dating, he was introducing her to Diana's family, basically saying that she was the next Diana. And they all just kind of took a step back and went, no, she really doesn't have anything in common with Diana. And so in Harry's mind, he's very much trying to save his mother in a way he couldn't when he was a child. Diana died, of course, in a drunk driving accident. She did not die because necessarily, yes, the paparazzi were chasing, and that was a factor, but it also would have been much better if Diana had been wearing a seatbelt and the driver wasn't drunk at the time. He may have been able to make better decisions not speeding through that tunnel like he was if he was of a sober mind. And you also had the additional fact, the additional catalyst of Martin Bashir, who concocted that panorama interview utilizing information that was false to manipulate Diana into it. And because of that, she decided to decline her Scotland Yard security, and the result was the accident. She had private security in that moment, not the Met security she could have had, and as the mother of the future king. And because of that, they would have prevented anything like that from happening. So Harry, in his mind, he is focused on seeing Meghan as Diana. When they went on the Australia tour, they thought of themselves that, oh, she was the next Diana. She's pulling in all these crowds in Australia. Now, the truth is that when a royal shows up, so do people. It has nothing to do necessarily with the person that's there. Now, granted, higher ranking royals, higher profile royals tend to gather larger crowds, but the crowds were large for Catherine and William. They were large for Harry and Meghan, and it did not have to necessarily do just with Meghan. She was just a new blood. She was a new entity, and people were just curious, and so they went. So this idea that they were there for Meghan is what was in Meghan's mind. Meghan thought she was generating all this press. Harry bought into this as well, and Sunshine Sachs fed that between them. And because of that, they grew this huge delusional brain that somehow Meghan was Diana. So because of that, Harry has to constantly try to save her. And unfortunately for Meghan, the press didn't go too well for her. The press turned actually pretty quickly after their tour in Australia. It came out about Tiaragate. That was about the first thing, or the bridesmaids. I can't remember exactly which one. But those two stories came out, and then we started hearing more and more about staff leaving and staff disgruntlement. We started hearing about these bullying, this bad behavior. There was a lot of talk about Meghan threw a hot tea at somebody in Australia, which I believe maybe Tom Bower's book, one of the books written about Harry and Meghan, really sort of confirmed that story. Now, we don't know it for sure. It's still just alleged, but there were a lot of these negative stories brewing, and Harry and Meghan didn't know what to do. And Harry is obsessed with Meghan. He was totally enamored, head over the heels. Not just that, but just obsessed. And William, I think, saw that and was very, very concerned about that from the beginning. That Harry was so intensely obsessed with her. And William's like, let's pull this back. Let's figure this out. And Harry just wasn't having any of that. And so when the press started to turn and things didn't start to go well, I think tension started to ratchet up at home, and Meghan put a lot of pressure on Harry to change how the media perceived her. She started putting a lot of pressure on him to get the palace staff to address all these negative stories about her. And I believe, honestly, and this is just my opinion, that her claims that she wanted perhaps end her life were actually more of a manipulation tactic than anything else, because she knew she was about the same level of pregnancy as Diana was when she had a similar thing happen to her. And so you could tell that Meghan was trying to mirror the life of Diana through that instance. And because of that, again, Harry just completely fell into that. He was completely obsessed with trying to address this, trying to change this, trying to make Meghan happy. And she was just there, pulling the strings, just getting him, ratcheting up the pressure, because he started, especially when their marriage was starting to come up, he was screaming at staff members, which he didn't normally do before. You saw this very bitter, angry man come out after Meghan started dating him. He just became entitled, enraged. I think he would probably fly off the handle. And there was one interesting report, and I can't remember which book it was, that they said that Meghan was the peacemaker. She would try to calm him down. I'm like, oh, no. She ratcheted him up, and then she would come in and sort of placate him in front of people. But I think she was the one behind the scenes manipulating things, getting all that tension built up within him. And because of that, it started just to build and build and build. And they went on all these tours. The articles were continually negative because of their behavior, but they couldn't address it and see it as their behavior. It had to be the press, had to be everybody else. And so they announced that they were going to pursue this case regarding Meghan's letter to her father with the Daily Mail. Now, at the end of the day, Meghan technically won that case, but people were mad that she won it. And she didn't win in the realm of public opinion because Jason Knapp came in and said, well, you could either say two things. She forgot or she lied about misplacing some communications between her and Omid Scobie, and basically the many drafts that she sent Jason Knapp of the letter she eventually wrote to her father. So Harry was constantly trying to protect her. Because of this, he played right into her hands. And she eventually was poking at him enough, going, Harry, we're never going to be safe. We're never going to be safe until we move to Hollywood, because it'll be better there. For a guy who claims to hate the press, why would you go to California? It's like the center of the celebrity sphere. Why would you go there? It just still continues to boggle my mind that anybody thought that was a good idea. But Meghan got Harry to go. They announced Megxit. And again, they were not smart in this. In a recent article, someone said they've done literally everything wrong you could possibly do. And this was probably one of their biggest mistakes, is Megxit, because they made the dumbest error you could possibly make of announcing their plan without having anybody back it and expecting them all to accept it. And the palace went, no, you can't have that. You can't be this half in, half out thing that you want. You can't continue to tour the Commonwealth at your whim and whimsy just if the mood hits you and you really want a tropical place to go. You can't do that. They pulled the rug out from underneath Harry and Meghan, and then they were sort of stuck. Now, Meghan got her way. She manipulated Harry into leaving everything about his life, his friends, his family, his country, his heritage, his culture, everything, to pursue this Hollywood thing with her. So she got her way, and they managed to get these major deals with the publisher, with Netflix, and with Spotify. But a couple years on, those don't look too good anymore. Now, some people have speculated that perhaps the Invictus documentary has been canceled by Netflix. I don't think that's the case. They put money into it already. They would air it if they have it, unless it was just supremely bad. And I just don't think it could be that supremely bad. Now, granted, if Harry and Meghan put way too much of themselves in that, Netflix might go back inside and edit it again. And then you have Spotify, which has let go more of its staff members, pulling more things back. And so they've continue to float this idea of archetypes coming back. Now, season 2 could technically start later this summer. It started dropping in the late fall. Yeah, because it was August, because I was in Poland about when the first episode dropped. That it could be later that we hear about it, but it is June, and well, it could come. This was not a raging critical commercial hit for Spotify either. And they're bleeding money a bit. And so you got to wonder, are they willing to pay all this money into Harry and Meghan when her initial product was even their single podcast together? They only did one episode of that, and they hardly did anything. They had other people record things, then they edit it, and then they popped in here or there. It's the laziest thing you could possibly do. I put in more effort to these videos than Harry and Meghan did in their first podcast together, or Meghan and any other type of archetypes, because I think pretty much people did everything for her on that podcast except for actually asking the celebrity interviewees the questions. She didn't talk to the other people that they interviewed. She only talked to the celebrities. So Meghan and Harry do the minimal amount of effort. Now, obviously, Harry's book did supremely well. Their documentary technically did supremely well. But at the same time, has it helped them? No. Harry has been manipulated into just dredging up all these terrible things, and it hasn't made him more popular. It hasn't helped him. His ratings and his popularity has cratered under the direction of Meghan Markle. And as time has gone on, we've seen in these couple reports that they're very much going their separate ways. This came out after the whole taxi debacle, which was again a whole thing in New York City, very much trying to recreate Diana's death, which, if you think about it, is both horrendously awful and so stinking creepy. Why would you do that? Why would you try to emulate his mother's death? That's creepy. That's just so creepy. Sorry to get a little high pitched there, but that is just really the epitome of creep and cringe, absolutely. And so nothing is going well. Meghan very publicly, I think, is going to start distancing herself from Harry. We even see this in the archetypes that it's only her. He pops in here or there because they went from, in the Cut interview, being salt and pepper at their house and having matching thrones to very much going down separate paths. Camilla Tommely, in a great video from The Telegraph, it's an analysis video talking about how Harry's looking at the past and Meghan's looking at the future. And while I don't think either of those roads are going to go well for them particularly, because they both don't have any talent. Harry just looks negative and complaining. Even The Economist pointed this out. I wondered, and I joked on Twitter, I was like, so does Meghan read The Economist anymore? After they talked about Harry's complaining far too much, which is all they've done about their life is complain about it. Even though they are some of the most privileged people on the face of the planet. They're freaking royalty in a $15 million mansion in Montecito, California, one of the richest zip codes in the world, and they complain constantly about their lot in life. That's wearing really thin. And again, Meghan's whole resurgence with the Ms. Awards that she went to got completely overshadowed and crushed under the weight of the idiocy that was that stupid New York story that they tried to spin, that it was a near catastrophic car chase. That just crumbled. But you could see there in those pictures, in those paparazzi pictures, Harry is immensely stressed. Meghan looks somewhat serene because I think she manipulated that situation. William Morris and Endeavor, they would be out of their minds to do that. I don't think they're idiots, and I don't think they would think, oh yeah, let's do that. Let's say you had a high-speed car chase in Manhattan. Everybody who has ever been to Manhattan looked at that story and went, are you kidding me right now? You can only go 3 miles an hour. And then you're wondering too, where were they going? Again, that whole story has been covered in another video. But the whole thing about that is that Meghan Markle, she began by manipulating Harry, playing on the memory of his mother, getting him to trust her implicitly, getting him to distance himself from his friends, his family, all these sorts of things. However, what happens to Pinocchio? Well, he becomes a real boy, right? And Harry, I think, what's happening is she has churned this up. She has created this little puppet, but the puppet's now gone rogue. Harry, I think, is a liability to Meghan now in her grand vision. I don't think she's happy necessarily with these court cases. Now she was the catalyst for them. But looking at what it's done to their reputation, look at the money they're draining from their accounts. Yes, they have a lot of money, but at some point, perhaps Harry will lose one of these court cases. Perhaps he may lose all of them. He's already lost part of his security case. He may lose everything. And then they're on the hook for perhaps millions of dollars in legal fees from these other companies. And then they open themselves up to litigation, perhaps. I look at all this and I think that Meghan wound Harry up, and now she can't turn him off. Because at the end of the day, she manipulated him for her own means, and she's not a great strategist. She's really not. She cannot think 12 steps ahead. She has this marionette in Harry, and she was able to get him to do everything she wanted to do. But now, things are going off the rails, and she has a wild puppet running around that she doesn't know how to control anymore. Because she started it. She wound him up. She got him so invested in seeing her as his mother, and seeing her as somebody who needs to be saved, and seeing her as this perfect creature who shouldn't have any negative stories written about her, and that he must save her, he must fix it. And I think what's truly sad in this situation is that Harry has been set up by Meghan to fail. I don't think she's ever necessarily all that happy. I think she gets irritated with him. I think she gets mad at him when things don't go their way. I can't imagine the rage, the plates maybe that were thrown after the New York thing went so horribly bad for them. And I think his tension, his misery, and why he's inflicting this misery on essentially everybody else through these court cases, through his just bad attitude and everything, is because he cannot fundamentally please Meghan Markle. So she has created him, given him praise when they initially started, but now I think it's turned broadly negative, and he's no longer probably a happy puppet. But unfortunately, he's gone too far, and he continues to go because she has imbued all this in him. She has placed all her hopes and dreams essentially on him doing X, Y, and Z, and he continues to do it when I think in some instances she would probably like him to stop, just because it's not going well for them. And her association with him looks increasingly bad on her. And she doesn't know how to deal with that. And she is desperate to make this Hollywood thing work. But the Spotify thing didn't go too well. Netflix went pretty well, but they're not too happy. Then Harry's book it sold amazingly well, allegedly. However, now he's less popular than he ever was, and that stinking book was used against him in his own court case. And so Meghan's got to be sitting there thinking, I need to fulfill my fame dreams. Harry can do whatever he wants, but I'm sure she, to a certain extent, wants him to come back to the puppet strings, reel him back in, so this is not going as badly as it is. But she has driven him to this obsessive need to correct his past. And I don't think she can pull him off it. And I think perhaps even through this case, he's missing perhaps the woman who was really the true love of his life in many ways, and that was Chelsea Davy. And I think, again, I've said this over and over again, I think he would love the life she leads, but not the one Meghan has forced him into. But he's stuck with it. And now he's desperately trying to try to please her, and nothing's working, and he could not be more miserable. Harry is a very miserable puppet. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Let me know what you think of my theory, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.